I had wrote, directed, and produced like an 18-member cast of sketch comedy, and so I already had road tested all of these jokes and things like that and characters, and I was teaching some of them how to do those characters. I said, let me just do them. I did them back to back to back on the stand-up stage, and I got laughs, but there were no segues because they were sketches. So I was like, and so then it was like I didn't have the format of stand-up.
Today, I am just beside myself. Get away from me. One of my dearest, bestest friends in the whole wide world. She is an award-winning actress, a comedian, a writer, producer, solo performer, singer, and sketch performer who unleashes entertainment that tickles the mind. She is one of the funniest people I know and has been referred to many times as the Black Carol Burnett. Please help me welcome Miss Sandy Brown.
Yay! High five.
Sandy Brown.
Hello.
So,
I'm
first
at the
of all,
table.
you're at
I'm
the table. That's right. You're at the table,
I like
girl.
it. I like it.
So, I want to talk to you
Yes.
about your one-person show, Oh Yes, She Did.
Oh yes, she did.
Now, give me the whole title.
Oh yes, she did.
Oh, that's it?
No, the main title is "Oh Yes, She Did: From Slavery to Spaceship:
Okay.
Black Women Heroes in America."
Oh, yes, she did.
Oh yes, she did.
From slavery to the spaceship.
From slave ship to spaceship, actually.
Okay, from slave ship to spaceship.
Yes.
All right, very good. Now, I want to know what inspired you to come up with this piece.
I had a different one-person show originally, and it was a futuristic show regarding the apocalypse and everything that's going on in the world. And I was asked to present a show for Black History Month. And I said, okay, I'll pull that together. And after studying one-person shows with Adele Barnes, as well as a few others, I said, this is a great thing that we've learned to do for Black History Month. When I went to study for each of them and I did the show, I did it the first time, and it was so overwhelming because for me, it wasn't just to put on the outfit and speak about the person. It was to embody that specific pivotal moment in their life that made a change, the sociological change that they made. And so to understand that, and my show spans 400 years of history, literally from slave ship to spaceship, and so each person embodies a specific time and space. And so you can't just play them all and expect there not to be layers. They overlap on one another, and one stands on the shoulders of each. So I needed to learn all about this time and period, the pre-slavery as well as slavery, the 1600s, all the way through to modern times, because you can't understand one period in history without understanding what fed into it and what happened afterwards. I mean, it informs all of that. So the more that you can't just throw that together. And I learned that when I did the first one, and it was so odd because the physicality of it and the costumes, because I wanted to literally give you the full dressings of each. Because some people do the solo show historical,
Right.
and they'll do an idea of the character, a scarf,
Right.
or a hat. For easy change, that's fine. But to me, I feel like you learn a lot about somebody by their clothing. We know a lot about each other now from the different clothing styles. Now you can clock something and understand why something is so. And so you carry yourself, and I think I mentioned this before to you, you carry yourself different whether you're wearing a corset or a dashiki. Do you know what I mean? And so that informs about the time too, and what the people are going through. And so it was very important to me that it was full dress, and the hand props and everything like that were important to me as well. And so I did an initial performance of it. And what was interesting is that I wasn't familiar with the idea of having to change clothes for each of them. So I hadn't adapted the quick change method in terms of Velcro and things like that. So I'm literally in there doing the full dressing, and I'm sure the audience was like, "Where did Sandy Brown left the building?" Something like that. And then I finally, when I got home the night after the show, and they loved the show, and it was so fulfilling to do it. When I got home, I slept for 24 hours. The energy of it, and also
the outpouring of
the
energy.
outpouring of
Yes.
energy to create it, and also when I got back, and it just, and there was just literally, for lack of a better word, whoever received this or not, there was a spirit that said, "Rest, my child." You know what I mean?
Yes.
and it hit over me, and I literally looked at the clock, and it was 24 hours later. I've never slept that long in my life. And after I did the show, I said, to continue to do this, I have to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I went deep into the woodshed, and deep woodshed study of each and every one of them, and the histories surrounding them. That's why there's such detailed with the costumes and things like that, because it informs that their way in the world. And I started doing it when I did it full out the first time, and it was my sister who helped me name it, because I said, "Oh yes, she did," or "Oh yes, she did." She was like, "No, keep it tight." She and a crew of people helped me do it for the first time at the Barbara Morrison Theater in Leimert Park, and
this was after you did it the first time.
After I did it for the college, and then when I did a performance there were more people on crew than were in the audience, and it was an exhausting turn, and I said, "Do I want to do this?" And it spoke to me again. No, you do want to do this.
You start with Phyllis Wheatley.
Yes, I do.
And what made you want to go all the way? Because you're covering 400 years.
I'm covering 400 years, and some of the women are so well known that they bring out every year in honor, in celebration of Black History Month, and others weren't so well known. And I had felt that I had done a level of study in my life and education that I should know these people, and I was affected by the fact that I didn't. And I said, well, then I just stepped into that. I stepped into that void and said, well, then I will present those so that other people know. And in fact, so
let's talk about who's on it, because you actually have two shows that you've broken up of these women. But on the first show, who are the stars of the first show?
Yes, we have Phyllis Wheatley. We have Harriet Tubman. We have Madam C.J. Walker. We have Josephine Baker. We have Billie Holiday. We have Rosa Parks. We have Angela Davis. And we have Shirley Chisholm. Now, what's interesting is I did all the graphics and ideas for it, and the idea of it was to have the iconic banana skirt of Josephine Baker as international spy and performer in the center, along with all of the other women.
So tell us who Josephine Baker is.
Josephine Baker was a entertainer, film star, actress, dancer from vaudeville days on up to the talkies, and she was also a spy. And so she was a spy.
She also left the country, America.
She left America
and became a citizen of France.
Yes. There were a lot of issues for Black Americans at the time, and a lot of performers had the option to go overseas. And she said, "I will do that. I will definitely do that." And what happened is the evolution of her life. She was confronted by Goebbels, and who was part of the Nazi Party, and people would write about her, and she was bold, and she was outspoken, and she would speak up about it, and she would also hide people for safety in her home. You go to my castle in Milan, you will find shelter there. And so she's such a powerful figure to me, from the quintessential rags to riches story, where I will not accept you not letting me in this door. I will bust open a door somewhere else. And that's so beautiful to me, and so vivacious of her. And she desegregated so many things. I do a sequence of her in Vegas, and so she was a huge part of the movement. Now I have her
civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement. Now I have her in the center and you guys will get an image of that. I have her in the center, and I have all of the other women around her. What's interesting is each woman, I recreated their iconic,
Look.
iconic imagery that we have of them. And when I did that, I remember one of the first theaters that I had it at, Theater on Pico in Los Angeles. I had it as a giant 6x9 banner rather. And I mentioned that because this woman and her children were walking by, and the director there, Jeff Murray, a great actor and director in his own right, he had literally just put it up and was checking the level of it to see the size, the angle of it. And this woman and her children came by and walked by it, and they walked by it, and the woman did a double take, and then she stepped back, and she started pointing to each of the women and explaining it to the two children. And that moved me, because I said, before they even see the show, it's teaching people. And so I feel like it's outside of me. The way in which I've presented this is on a different level than I've ever experienced it. And the response has been amazing and uplifting and spiritual, and people get a feeling from it, very much like a gospel play without it being overtly a gospel production. But there's a spiritual feeling that people have, and it doesn't matter. It's not just quote unquote for people of color, for African Americans or
it's American
women.
History.
Right. It's beyond that. It also speaks of an underdog situation and surviving and thriving and overcoming that people respond to. And can I share a little side story regarding the banner? Okay, so as artists, and often with theater, we're very limited on budget, and so that's how you're often able to be so creative, because you don't have the budget to do things on a main level. That was my publicity. That big 9-foot poster that people drive by on the street, that was my publicity push. And one day, came to the theater, and the banner was gone.
What?
The banner was gone. I was like, oh, what? It had disappeared, and no one knew what happened. And went over to it, and I was devastated. I looked over at it, and it wasn't like it was just ripped off, because I looked in trash cans. I was like, did somebody just vandalize it? We looked, and when we looked at the rivets on which it was put on, someone had carefully cut around the rivets, and I'm like, somebody's sitting at home with the beer going, oh yeah, she did. Oh yeah, she had tried. I was like, what? Someone stole my banner. I was like, it was a fine blend of flattery and also creepiness. It's like somebody, what?
I'm pissed off.
And I was like, that's not my promotion.
Yeah.
So that did enough, but there were so many things that had happened along the way in the production and lifting this to bring the show to fruition, that my cousin told me something. My cousin, Charles Holman, who was an actor in his own right, may he rest in peace, was so supportive of this. And he said to me, Sandy, you can't expect to play women who've gone through so much without being in a pool of things that you need to overcome to bring them forth. And I was like, oh, you got me there, and to do them honor. So there's a lot that I've learned along the journey. Even when I was writing it, I didn't know. At first I was thinking, I'm getting the details of it, but I wanted to get the humanity of it beyond just the legend of it, but the human response and what they were feeling, and that everyone can relate to. And that's what's universal, is that when people see it and the reactions, and you'll see some of those, it's that they realize that it's not that these were just superhuman people, superheroes, doing whatever. It was the average person and their situation where it came to a point where they could make a decision to make change, be the change, or influence the change.
They didn't wait.
Or turn around. And they
did
stepped
not wait
up. And that's what
for
you see.
change.
That's what you see in the show at that moment. And people, it speaks to them. That's what they relay back to me. There are people that have seen the show that are saying, I feel deprived. I didn't learn this in school. And there's people that go and see it over and over again, and that blows my mind too. There were some people who, theater is right near Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. They brought a chicken dinner up there on the upper rafters, and they were sitting there. And it was like they turned into dinner theater, and they were like, "This is my thing. This is my," you know. And I'm like, so that tickled me that they were so. The response to the show has been so inspiring.
What was the difference of the audience? Because I would assume that there is such a different audience in the Bay Area.
Well, I went to school in the Bay Area at UC Berkeley, and that, I will just say, just to be honest, it's a more literate community. I mean, they're more tapped in. It's the, foundation of the Black Panthers and all these different organizations, so they're more aware, and they're more tapped in than they are out here. So there's a richness to their appreciation too, and to get history teachers that are like, you bringing stuff in that I didn't even know. You know what I mean? So that moves me to the respect for the craft in terms of the writing. This is the thing also with this project, that it allowed me to step forward, and it's okay. I know I'm jumping into a lot of different things. There's a lot. Okay. There's a lot that goes into it. But this particular project came at a time when things had gotten slow for me as an actress, and I think that a lot of the onset of reality TV has affected a lot of us seasoned actresses that have lots of credits and things like that. This show allowed me to write, direct, produce characters that I may have never likely been cast in. During the time that I ran this show, over 200 performances, over 7,000 people have seen the show. During that time of doing that, I don't think I've ever felt more creatively fulfilled. As fun and wonderful as film and TV, stand-up, all of that, being able to create this every night and take that audience on that long journey of something, it was so rich because each of the women tap into a different aspect of you, and not just as an artist.
Let me jump in here, because I think what the audience has to know is, first of all, you have been doing sketches for a bazillion years. Yeah. Between sketches and stand-up. Yeah. And so you already had a sense of character, because in your comedy, you do a lot of characters. Yeah. You bring them into the party. So that this was an extension of something you were already doing. I mean, you were already writing, you were already creating characters, but now you went into another zone.
Yeah, I had taken it to another level, and I'm known for my comedy. I'll get people that may not know my name, but they know my work, and they're like, "You're that girl. What's that show that you're on that show? What's that show that you play that crazy woman on and the neurotic one?" I'm like, all of them, because that's what I've been, kind of typecast as. And when you do this, you get to work all of these other muscles. When you had mentioned Phyllis Wheatley, who is an iconic writer, pioneer of African American literature, when I wanted to get such authenticity with the characters that I know her background. She's from Senegal, Gambia, and brought here on a slave ship. And I would want the specificity that we would learn in Larry Moss's class. Larry Moss is an acting teacher here in Los Angeles, extraordinaire. And whenever somebody I knew was going to Africa, or a friend of mine, I would say, if you're going to Mali or Senegal, Gambia, just bring me back a pebble so I can sew that into the dress. Something from
her home.
Something that is hers, that is of her. That when I walk out there. And what's interesting is over this time, I've found out I've done the DNA. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things, and with all of the surprises that showed up in that, I can be easily offended by just almost anything, which I love. I love that I can tap in, and that I'm kind of related to everybody, everywhere. So, but with that, I found out that I have that from her region, and that just moved me in such a way in terms of it awakens you, and we're talking, let's say we're talking a little bit more about the craft itself. When we have studied under Larry Moss in his book Intent to Live,
Mm-hmm.
he would say in class, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I was like, that's not true. And I'm like, oh, it is, you know. And I'm learning with this show completion of creativity and going deeper. And it forced me to dust off all of my aspects of my creativity into this one thing to bring it forth. And it has blessed me. It continues to bless me and others. And
So
it's the definition of
let me
a
ask
caption
you,
piece.
as an African American woman,
Yes.
who took these iconic African American women
Yes.
from our history, because they are part of American history.
Yes.
How has that made you a more responsible citizen, someone who pays attention a little bit more now because of that?
I'm hypersensitive. I would say I'm a hypersensitive person to social injustice. I'm hyper aware of wanting to correct things. It makes me aware of how when I hear something in the news, I'm aware of the connective tissue, and I understand how I'm able to stand where I stand, you know, and stand in honor of that, and to remind others of that. I'm able to be aware of what's happening today, in many cases, is a result of something that happened several hundred years ago. And you can see the evolution of that we're still dealing with, that we're still trying to, you know, one of the characters in Volume 1, I won't say character, but legend of Volume 1 is Angela Davis. And when I'm on the megaphone with her at her rallies, and, you know, she goes, and speaking in terms of,
And Angela Davis is who?
Is an iconic professor and civil rights leader. She and women's study pioneer and prison study pioneer. Speaking with her through the megaphone and the audience, and one of the things is that I'm taking you into a 60s rally as Angela Davis, and saying, you know, and that women should be paid the same as men, and you can hear the audience still roar, because we're still dealing with that today, you know. And even speaking about how we arrived at that point, with the history that's behind that. And so I'm aware of the connective tissue on stuff, and it informs my writing and performance, and a raised eyebrow on stuff that I feel like I'm aware of, stuff that someone may not but needs to know. And it's an honor, and that is my artistic challenge, is to be able to present things in a way that tickle the mind and uplift the soul.
So in let's talk Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah.
Shirley Chisholm and Senator Harris.
Yeah.
Because the first woman who ran for president was Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah.
And then, 40 years later, we had a black woman running for president.
Yeah.
It's
Once again, that's the connective tissue that you see, and the echoes of that. In fact, when Shirley Chisholm ran for president, and she is someone that I didn't know until I was researching the other women, when I was doing the in-depth study, I was like, wait a second. And I'm like, I got to put her in. And
Shirley Chisholm was a badass.
And people started having T-shirts of her that would say, you know, Shirley Chisholm made Obama as well as Hillary Clinton possible. Their runs, you know. So, and I remember in one of the interviews that she has, she goes, you know, essentially that they may laugh when they see me run, because people are like, you're not going to win, Shirley. Wait. She goes, oh, they may laugh now, but they won't laugh the next time if there's a woman or a person of color running, because they can see that it can be done. And it's so powerful that she stood there knowing that, with the slings and arrows that were coming at her, and she just stood her ground, and with a knowing my place in history, right here, right now. That, and and so it gives me chills. These women give me chills. Y'all get me emotional over here in the studio clubhouse. But yeah, and there's an interview, a post interview after the show of a woman who says, with these
of your show,
of my show, and she said, watching these women, these heroines, awakens the heroine in me. And she was just in tears.
How has that awakened the heroine in Sandy Brown?
The resilience to know, just like my cousin would say, you can't expect to go through something. You can't expect to bring these women forth without going through some stuff yourself. And so, because our industry can give us can treat us like a ping pong ball, and to understand my journey is not the same as anyone else's, and to recognize my lane and to recognize my place as a creative, and the value of that. And it excites me. It excites me to know the shoulders I stand upon. It's may I be worthy.
You are worthy.
May I do work that honors all that's come before me.
Yes, and you do that.
Thank you.
Yes, you do
Thank
that.
you.
Guess what? I've got this fabulous little bundle just for you because you are a fabulous actor. I got it for you. So what do I got for you? Let me tell you what I got for you. I got the PR cheat sheet, which every actor needs. You need to know how to do your own PR until you get that job where you can pay for a PR person. Then I have the 12-step audition. That's another cheat sheet. Sometimes you get freaked out at auditions and you don't know what to do. Well, my 12-step audition cheat sheet will help you and guarantee that you will slam your audition every time. And the third thing I got for you is the casting sites. I have a list of casting sites so you can go and just submit yourself for that next big part. How does that sound? It sounds good, doesn't it? So, first of all, I just want to stop for a second and just brag on you.
Oh my goodness, I will receive this.
Just for a moment. So, when I first, I heard about you before I met you. Christy Madrano and I.
The lovely and talented Christy Madrano.
The amazing, funny, wonderful, biting Christy
Fireball,
Madrano.
Spitfire.
And I were walking into the Comedy Store to get ready. I think we might have been doing Funny Ladies of Color or something. We walked in and Chewy, the doorman, said, you guys know who Sandy Brown is? I was like, Sandy who? Sandy Brown. Oh, she's hot. She's been here all week. She's this, she's that. You guys need to put her on your show. And then we walk in and there was some comedy paper at that time. And we opened it up and there was a whole article on you. And me and Chrissy was like, we need to know who this Sandy Brown person is. And probably about 2 hours later, you popped up at the Comedy Store.
Yes.
And you were coming in and we pretty much jumped you. We're like, are you Sandy Brown?
And it was so weird. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Because are you these Sandy Brown? That's what it was. Okay. So here's the backstory. Make sure you bring me back there if I go off too far. I went to school at UC Berkeley. I was pre-med, but I loved art. And I took a chance, and I did a semester program at NYU Film and Television. And I had done a sketch troupe on the campus. But when I went to do
stand-up, at NYU or Berkeley?
I began a campus sketch troupe at UC Berkeley.
Okay.
And the second semester, people's schedules had changed, but they wanted to do it. And I was like, I'm not going to wait because you wait for other people. You do your work. You do your creativity. So I said, let me just take all of these characters on stage. So I went to the Holy City Zoo, which is a famous club, small room in San Francisco, run by Will and Debbie Durst, the famous Will Durst. And I got up on
And
stage.
that's a room that Robert Williams used to play at.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
it's yeah. And I went there, and you know who was in the audience at the time of my first day? It was Aisha Tyler and her husband. I remember they were in the back. You know, I just yeah. So anyway, so I went there, and I'm all casual, you know, and I did my whole sketch show because I had wrote, directed, and produced like an 18-member cast of sketch comedy, and so I already had road tested all of these jokes and things like that and characters, and I was teaching some of them how to do those characters. I said, let me just do them. I did them back to back to back on the stand-up stage, and I got laughs, but there were no segues because they were sketches. So I was like, and so then, you know, it was like I didn't have the format of stand-up. And this couple had sat at the bar, and they said, "How long have you been doing it?" I said, "This is my first night," you know. And I was forever hooked. Now, foundation of this is my mother, Candace Lilly, showcased for Mitzi Shore way back in the day
At the Comedy Store.
At the Comedy Store, and I remember. It had to be circa 1982 because she was doing this bit about Vanessa Williams winning Miss America and how America just didn't know what to do when they felt, well, she's black, African American. And so my mom made a sash. She was giving you prop comedy and giving you, you know, of African American Miss America. And she'd gone to the club. Mitzi loved her, and then Mitzi wanted her back. And I remember when she had gone back a few times, and then she goes, I don't want to be anywhere around that, because at that time in the 80s it is known as to be perhaps snort
debauchery.
Debauchery. Can we say okay, coke heaven, you know, and my mom as a single mom, she was like, my mom, you know, she really didn't drink, all these different things, so it wasn't her scene, and so she felt very uncomfortable being around that, even though she had been in the industry in another aspect of it as a makeup artist in the blaxploitation era, and is even in a couple of those films as cameos. She was like, this scene, I don't think I can bring my daughter, because you would have to have your daughter with you, or figure out nighttime stuff every night to be in the rooms, or on the road. You'd have to figure out a way for your children. As a single mom, it didn't say, yeah. So, but that is her love. That is her thing of funny, and she would always write scripts. I remember her working at the lot, Paramount lot, and you know, Solid Gold with Rick Dees, and doing funny scripts and writing and submitting. And so it's like that's what I grew up on, but it never connected for me until later. And so when I did the stand up, it was so fun. It was one of those whoosh, the aha moment, or the satori, as I say, where you go, oh, you have an awakening about yourself. And so I went back to campus. I said, this is what I want to do. I stepped away from theater at that point, and I just started doing stand-up. I was recommended by the godfather of comedy there, Tony Sparks, and Blaine Capatch, one of the luminaries of the alternative comedy scene, recommended me for Punchline, because you had to get a recommendation to be able to get in. Did that. They recorded the set. I used that set to submit to things. It was a 15-minute set.
This is the set that got you the.
This is exactly
the manager.
That's what happened. So it was 15-minute set. It was all the material I had, but you wouldn't know it. And I submitted it to the San Francisco Punchline competition, and I got in, became a finalist, and there were amazing people in that. Should I say the names? Okay, there was Wanda Sykes was in there. I was just a baby right there at UC Berkeley. Wanda Sykes was there. Mitch Hedberg, Shang, Carlos Alazraqui. I mean, there were all these people that were well steeped in the game, and here I am going, I just got my little 15 minutes of material, you know. I was so out of my league, but I had made my way, and did not win, but I was one of the 3 people that were chosen by Carsey Warner for a meeting, as well as I got my agency, my UTA was my first agent through there, and management with Arthur Spivak. So I was set, you know, in terms of that, but they're still trying to figure out, Okay, so how do I pay for a plane to LA? How do I get back there? And that's when I got back here, and I stayed with my brother for a while. And I remember going up to the Comedy Store, and I remember you and Christy coming up there, just like, and your heads were like this, like, listen. And I was like, hey, what's up? And because I was saying I wanted, if I could get in to pop in and do some time for this, did I try to meet everybody? And I remember you guys had come up to me, and you're like, yeah, I've got you on the list. But Sandy Brown, are you the Sandy Brown? I was like, I didn't even know what did you say? I didn't know if I was the Sandy Brown that you saw. And they had printed my development deals. I had back-to-back development deals.
But that hadn't come yet.
But I was being called for auditions.
Yes.
I was being called for auditions with Damon Wayans and a few other things where I remember they wanted a no name for the project, but then ended up casting Robin Givens or something like that. And because I was that was that look, they were going to take, a no name at the time, but that's a whole other journey as far as losing out to celebrities. But I was in the scene and with my little 15 minutes of material.
Right, but you made an impact when you first got to LA.
And it wasn't, and also with my stand-up, it wasn't that I just popped in and didn't have anything. I had been
But you
writing.
had characters.
I had characters. I had been screenwriting. I had been acting. So I had tons of years of training in the arts and all different branches of it. So it just became an amalgamation of that when I would create something.
You kind of broke out quickly here. I mean, you got into the store, you got a development deal, then got another development deal. You started doing commercials. You started you just started taking off.
My first club I was passed at was at the Comedy Store, so I became a paid regular at the Comedy Store. It was my first club. The second one was the Laugh Factory, and it was an amazing time. I mean, I just lived and breathed, ate, slept, and drank comedy and performance. And what ended up happening is that the TV started taking off a lot, and so it was kind of flipping the time that I would spend in comedy clubs. It was more so preparing for my auditions, or if I booked a series that I'm focused on that as well.
And you have a great story with Richard Pryor.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
At the Comedy
Store. Yes. Richard Pryor, it was such an honor when he would come into the store that everybody would want to watch and hang out and see him. There was one night that I had to follow him, and he was on the marquee.
This was in the main room or the OR?
He was in the OR.
Okay.
And they popped in, and people, it was packed because people were like, see Richard Pryor literally on Sunset Strip. Now, what they didn't know, what they didn't remember, when they came to see him, that it's like it didn't register to them his affliction.
He was getting multiple sclerosis. Mm-hmm.
So there was with heavy heart in the room. It would take about 5 minutes to assist him from his wheelchair up to that stage, and he would do his act. And he wasn't, prowling around the stage like he used to. He was sitting there and speaking about, but still anchored in what was actually happening in his world, and the simplicity of daily things. And you're hearing his comedic mind work these daily things, which is different than what they're used to seeing. And so you can feel the audience. There's a heaviness because they're seeing him in a different light.
Right.
And
they're seeing a fragile.
They're seeing
Pryor.
they're seeing him affected, and it would also be a 5 minutes to help him, assist him off the stage, and he would sit in the back room next to Mitzi's seat as they were helping his chair, because usually when it's the next comic, they say your name and you bounce up there, and I couldn't as they were doing that, and they were like, get up there. And Mitzi was like, get up there, Sandy, get up there, get on that stage, okay. And I go and I do my set, but understand, because it's Richard Pryor, people are there, and some of the room just cleared out because that's all they wanted to see. And there's others who were all shoving their little napkins up in his face, going, "Will you sign this?" As he's sitting in the seat. So I'm doing my set, and first thing I say was, can you say sacrificial lamb? And I was like, this kind of said, I'll put a hair on your chest. And I'm just trying to do my stuff, trying to be up, but while people are walking,
right.
Wait a second, and then I go outside, I was like, oh my God, and Mitzi goes, and her signature voice, she goes, Sandy, come over here. Richard wants to say something to you. And I went over and I leaned at them because they were sitting next to her, and I leaned low, and all of these people were holding up their napkins to him. Could you sign this? Can you sign this? Can you sign this? And he reached up his hand like he was parting the Red Sea, and just like reached over, and it was fragile. It's fragile, and he reached over from my hand and said, "I'll hold your hand. I'll show you." And he goes, you're very funny. And I was like, oh. I said, you should see me when I don't have to follow you. and he just went, and Mitzi just leaned over and smiled. And I was just, I just bowed and I said, thank you for, I just showered him with gratitude, and he just smiled and he just nodded, and that showered me, and it I'm cloaked in that.
This was after you did Def Comedy Jam?
Yeah, because by the time I was there, what brought me to LA, trying to think of the time frame, that was after that. Had to be after that. Yeah, because I hadn't come back. I was, a still struggling college student, and on stage, and just like, how am I gonna, what do I do after I do this performance? But it all started coming together in a whirlwind. But I was very, we talk about artistry and the process of an artist. I was very focused and making things happen. Some call it manifesting, or creating things in process.
Let's talk about manifesting,
Yeah.
because you were the one who turned me on to Anthony Robbins.
Tony Sparks put me on to Tony Robbins. He gave me a cassette tape flap of Tony Robbins and Les Brown, and I was listening to this stuff, and as a struggling artist, top ramen and bologna sandwiches in the microwave,
fried bologna sandwiches,
and microwave bologna sandwiches, and going, I believe. walking your success. I'm just like, if they say so, and also Shakti Gawain, if I must say, Shakti Gawain's creative visualization was so powerful. And all the different aspects of your life to focus on that. I was manifesting at an incredible rate. And I was just in the zone. It puts you in the zone because you're able to be aware of synchronicities and opportunities. You're like, I should call so and so, or I should go to this because that's part of, you start to see connections in your way in the world, in the way you move, and the things that you look into or follow up with. It's not just something random that shows up, but it influences you, and your instincts kick in, and you're led in a beautiful way. And so I was manifesting things that people were just like, you just started. I mean, and I'd have been doing stand-up, honestly, 6 months, 6 months, less than a year. Before I got my back-to-back development deals. But once again, the writing was there. It had been road tested. The character work was there. And so there was artistry behind that influenced that. And then you get into other things too, being a woman in the industry, being sometimes the only one. And even today, you'll find one woman or no woman on a lineup. I like to call those sausage fest shows. Sausage festivus. Who have been your mentors in stand-up? Guys who have because for the most part, it's been men who have kind of taken you under their wing. I think you'll find a variety within the comedic community. You'll find your heroes, from the full spectrum of heroes to vultures. You know what I mean? And there are some that will take you under the wing and are so protective of you and see your light and see your way in this industry and believe in you and keep you encouraged. despite what's going on.
Who are a few of those people for you? Because for me, it is Jackson Purdue.
Yes.
It is Daryl Savad. It is Charles Cozart. There were a few of the Comedy Store regulars that when I started, like kind of rallied around me and helped me along.
Yeah.
And Daryl Savad was great at helping me learn how to write.
Yeah.
That there's a specific way of writing stand-up that's different to just writing.
Right. I have a few. I wanted to jump back to one thing before I answer that too. When I was studying at NYU, there was a comic that was performing in Washington Square Park to random people, and his name was Dave Chappelle. And
Was
it was
he with
so
Charles
fascinating.
Barnett?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
He was with Charles Barnett, also a legend
who was his
New York,
mentor.
Who was his mentor.
That's right.
And it was so fascinating because all of us were just waiting to get our spots at Boston Comedy Club in New York. But Dave Chappelle didn't wait. There was a boldness to him and Charles Barnett, because they would stand in Washington Square Park, do stand up, take turns, and then pass around a hat. They would do 3 shows a day, minimum like 3 shows a day. And I had such respect for that, because it's one thing when people come to a comedy club, they paid entrance fee or not, they've got a 2-drink minimum, they're there to see comedy. When you have to be so engaging that people stop what they're doing, where they're going in New York, to listen to you, that builds a certain muscle. And to see him do that, was exciting and baffling at the same time. It's like, this is fascinating, because people sitting there walking the dog and doing a turn around, doing their thing. But, and also that muscle of, I don't care if you aren't paying attention. I'm going to do what I'm doing and be so engaging that you will stop what you're doing. So that was interesting to see that. My heroes, people that have believed in me, and that would be or that have said things that have motivated
Champion
me.
you in some way.
Definitely would be Richard Pryor would be the first. Shane Forbes, definitely the beasts, too. Robert Townsend, I recall. Arsenio Hall. I had to follow Arsenio Hall, and he was like, "Great set." I'm like, "Great career," I was like, "I got this." There's so many.
Arsenio is also a supporter, because I remember being at the Comedy Store, having to follow him.
Yes.
And again, when you follow somebody big, the room empties out after them.
Absolutely.
And so the room had emptied out, and I was trying to get my footing, and Arsenio was in the back. Do your set. Just do your set, and that calmed me and allowed me to. And I remember that was such a gracious.
Yes.
That was so gracious, because sometimes you had very high profile comics who would come in. They would bump you, and then when you got on stage, they were rude, and they were talking while you were doing your set, or I encountered some of the ugliness of that. So Arsenio has a good place in my heart, because he and when he would come in, he was easy. It wasn't like, don't talk to me because I'm Arsenio Hall.
Right.
So I really appreciated that.
I would say Rick Overton.
Yes.
Charlie Hill.
Oh, Charlie Hill.
Famous Native American
Love
comic.
Charlie
In
Hill.
your face, bold trailblazer. And he was such a champion, and he would give me books of influence and things like that. And
Me
I would
too.
say, Sandy, I want you to read this. I want you to check this out. And I have to say, Tony Sparks. Tony Sparks was my first in the Bay Area. Godfather Comedy was my first champion, and he's and just teaching me the rules of comedy, to understand why I knew someone was funny, but even go deeper and to scrape those surfaces so that you understand why this is funny. My nickname, you said called it Black
Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett, but in college, my nickname was Bluesy, as a Black Lucille Ball, and so that is my foundation, is my facial expressions and the physicality and the playing with the audience and the raised eyebrow, because that's what I learned. I grew up doing
Well,
impressions.
you do screwball comedy very well.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's
that was my first sense of comedy was of doing impressions. Like my first impression was Charlie Chaplin, and I would do that, or I would do things to stay up at night. So I would take like the plastic tree. This is real, but a plastic tree, and late at night after my bedtime, I would just kind of walk into the living room with everybody and kind of walk behind the tree with the tree across the room. And because they would start laughing, Sandy, okay, you can stay up. And I'm like, yes. I mean, I was rewarded for being funny, you know, and yeah, and so I use those different tools and understand that it is different for a woman, and it's changing. We've so many women that are broken through now, but it's not always like that, and we still have our challenges. And I just am finding my way. I'm finding my way back to stand-up to the point where I love it. I stepped away from it because I had so much TV and other things going on that I began to miss it and understand that it's intrinsic to what I do and expressing myself.
What do you love about stand-up?
I love. You know what's different about stand-up than theater? Or in theater, or film and television, which the foundation of those are theater as well, is that you get instant feedback from the audience on your thoughts, your reaction, on what you're doing. If a singer sings a song, the audience may not like that song, they think, oh well, but in stand-up, you live or die by that sword. If they don't like you. That's how it feels. So it's such a teetering thing, but when you're on, I don't think there's a better feeling when you're on that flying carpet of humor, taking the audience on a ride, making the audience bend, is what they say, is when they're laughing so hard that they're bowling over. That is a joy. And so my goal at this point is to follow my comedy brethren that are beast modes, and to be able to just grab the audience by the neck and not let go. That's where I want to go. That's what I'm focusing on. And so there's a whole renewed interest and joy to stand up now in a new way than what I had before, and dabbling into territories I hadn't touched before.
What would you say to a young woman out there who wants to pursue stand-up?
You do it. If the mic is calling you, you do it. And it's set up now where you can get up more often in a lot of different places. It's available now in places we didn't have those options. If we weren't booked at one of the main rooms, you weren't getting up unless it was some random show that hardly ever happened. With now the inundation of comedy, a lot of venues have that as a thing. Get on the open mic, speak your truth, do your comedy. If it calls to you, you must do it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was wonderful. Yeah. Such a treat. All of Sandy's information is located in the description below, so you can get access to her on social media. You can find out about her show. You can find out how you can book her, all on the description below.